So I mean, you've spoken out in support of this. Why do you think this information session of sorts is important to kind of get the conversation going?
Well, I mean, it's very clear that the federal government is going to move on this file, whether you like it or not. And so we don't want to be caught flat-footed as a city. For example, allowing dispensaries to open and then later going, nah, that's not going to work. We need new rules, and closing them. And we've seen even before cannabis has become legal, we've seen real big problems in Toronto and Vancouver around precisely these issues. So I think it's important for us to get started on understanding the zoning issues, the building code issues, all of the things that are important to the city. The good news is that when Colorado legalized by referendum, both the mayor of Denver and the governor of Colorado were opposed to the legalization. But when the legalization came through, they very clearly said, we're going to study the heck out of this so that we've got a bunch of information, a huge data warehouse to share with other municipalities. So I'm really happy that we've got someone from Denver up today to help us understand all of that, and I hope even what we learned today will be helpful for other municipalities across Canada.
What is your biggest concern?
I have a number of them. They are around, number one, building code. So we need to make sure that if people are doing grow operations within existing buildings with that level of humidity and so on, that we need to make sure that we're careful about things like mold and fire access and so on. Number two, public nuisance. So it's taken a long time for us to pass bylaws around public smoking, for example. And now we've really got to get a sense around how, if people are going to be using marijuana, how they're doing so not at the detriment of their neighbors. And then number three is really around retail and dispensing. So what's that going to look like? Do we want to have the same kinds of rules as we have for liquor stores, for example? They can't be within a certain distance of one another. They can't be within a certain distance of schools. These are kind of the three main areas that I'm concerned about.
Interesting, your policing costs might go down.
That is one of the arguments that people have made for legalization for a really long time, suggesting that the police are busy prosecuting what a lot of folks think of as petty crime. I'm not sure that the costs are going to go down, but I do think it will allow the police to focus on perhaps more important things.
Why would you get into the aspect of residential growing when there could be like retail outlets and the myriad of problems that could come with the residential aspect?
The city's position has been that below a very small scale, people should be able to grow in their own homes, avoiding a bunch of problems of distribution. The task force has recommended, I believe, 4 plants per home, and that's something that probably we don't need to regulate. We don't regulate house plants at that scale, but we have to see what the task force actually comes up with. I suspect that if Colorado is any indication, we're going to see a real variety of industry crop up around this. You'll have sort of mainstream industry, very professional distributorship and so on. You'll have probably a craft industry, and you'll probably have a grow your own. It's a lot like beer. You'll have, the big beer companies, you'll have craft breweries, you'll have some people who brew their own. I imagine we'll end up with something like that, and we'll need the right regulatory environment at each level.
Municipally speaking, does Denver have it right from what you've heard?
We'll find out this afternoon.
Is this something you've been hearing from the public a lot about? People saying they're concerned about it in their area or anything like that?
No, not really. But we do know that, we had a whole whack of unregulated dispensaries in Toronto and Vancouver in particular, and it became a very big problem for those city councils, and frankly, one they weren't prepared for. So I want to make sure we're prepared well in advance.
But at this point, you haven't been...
No, I don't think it's very high on people's radar. It's the only one. I managed to get one here.
Did you want to chat a bit about the city's response to our little snow event?
Sure. We've had a really significant snow event, as everyone knows, over the weekend. And it's one of the irritating ones when the snow continues to fall during rush hour, which makes it very, very difficult to get ahead of it. In fact, our collision rates this morning were very good, so thank you, Calgarians, for driving carefully and leaving lots of extra time. I myself had a very slow but safe commute today. So as the snow tapers off, we'll be able to catch up on those priority 1 roads, your Glenmores, your Crowchilds, and so on. And we will have a snow route parking ban in effect as of 6 p.m. today after work. Please move your cars off of those priority 2 roads those snow routes that are marked with the snowflake signs. Basically, if there's a bus that goes down that road, it's a priority 2 road, and you can't park on it. So please park off the street, on the side streets, or in the alley, which is going to be allowed until the city lifts that ban.
And you better listen this time because they're not messing around.
Yeah, we haven't had one in a couple of years, actually. We've been very lucky. But, we will ticket and tow vehicles that are parked in violation of the ban. It's not because we're being mean, but it's because we have to actually clear those streets. And in fact, I'm not sure what the Calgary Parking Authority's plan is. I know in the past they've done short tows just around the corner. But we'll see what ends up happening this time around. But please, please, please keep your vehicles off so we can clear this quickly and be ready for the melt that is anticipated in about a week's time.
When they do the snow route ban and they clear the street, any possibility they can get rid of the windrows, the rows that occur that they build up?
So what we do with windrows is it really depends on the what's the word I'm thinking of? The size. That's a good word. When we think about windrows, it depends on the size and the severity of those windrows. We will remove them now, and I know, for example, on the West Hill, west of Sarcee Trail, we were busy removing windrows through December. On my own street, I live on a priority 2 street. There's a bus route that goes down my street. The windrows, frankly, are manageable. I can drive over them in my Toyota. So it all really depends on the level of them. Sometimes we can flatten them out a little bit. If they're really, really bad, we can remove them. But that takes time and it's expensive, so we wait until they're pretty bad before we do that.